Yeah, thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday night to join us. This is a project. I'm trying to recall when we kind of kicked this idea around. It's probably been a good while, at least back in the spring. But it's something that I had seen a presentation a couple years ago. A couple of folks from Schuylkill Township actually had named a number of streams in their township. They described the process, and I said, "Hey, we have a lot of unnamed streams in North Coventry, so I thought it would be fun to go through the same process there and to test the waters and see if we get a couple of these streams formally named through the USGS." A little bit of background about me. So my name is Corey Trego. Let's see, there we go. So I'm a environmental scientist by trade. I spent all of my graduate, and then my career pretty much working, focusing on streams and wetlands, but especially streams. Spent a lot of time growing up fishing in streams, walking along streams, camping along streams. And just find them to be very beautiful, peaceful places. So I've always had a passion for protecting them, a passion for caring for them, and a passion for learning more about them, and learning the history about them. So this was a fun project for me. Um, just a quick outline for tonight. So I'm going to kind of kick off just, what is a stream and why are streams important? Very high level stuff. Talk a little bit about why we should name streams. Give a brief overview of the streams in North Coventry. So talk about some of the streams we have in our township. I'll go over the process of naming a stream. So what that looks like to formally move through that process. Talk about the township stream naming effort and the streams that we focused on in this. And then I'll take any questions that you guys have. All right, so very beginner high level stuff. So what is a stream? A stream is a body of water, any body of water that has a current that's confined within a stream bed and stream banks. The one thing that most people, or not most people, a lot of people may not know is that streams are not just the water that falls on the Earth's surface and runs across the ground. Most of the water in a stream through most of the year, it's called the base flow, is really water coming up from groundwater reservoirs. So precipitation that's fallen, sometimes days ago, sometimes years ago, that's making its way slowly through the soils, through the rock, and then coming down to these low points that are called streams. So a stream is confined, a watershed is the area that drains to a stream. So I'll mention a couple times tonight about watersheds. So I just wanted to introduce that. And a concept that's very important is that streams very significantly reflect the condition of the watersheds that are around them. So when even if an activity might be hundreds of yards or even miles from a stream, everything within a stream's watershed has an impact on that stream one way or another. So I'll mention some properties of some of the watersheds of the streams that we're focused on here. So just as like an FYI, that's is a watershed, and we'll talk about that a couple times. A key point I want to drive home: so streams provide a lot of ecosystem functions and services. So these are things that they provide us without us necessarily having to pay for them. So they're free services that streams provide. So things like drinking water, Pottstown. So if you're on municipal water, your water comes from the Schuylkill River, and all the streams in North Coventry Township flow eventually to the Schuylkill River. So they provide clean drinking water. They provide water for agriculture. They provide recreational opportunities. Streams and their riparian corridors and their floodplains, they actually provide flood storage capacity. And not only flood storage capacity, so if you have a healthy stream and a healthy watershed, when flooding happens, it gets over the banks, but a lot of that is stored and slowed down by the vegetation, by wetland areas adjacent to streams. And they also do important things like filter out sediment pollutants. And then, of course, streams are important because they have a lot of history tied to them. A lot of the ways that our communities grew over time were shaped very significantly by streams. So why should we name streams? There's a lot of name streams around already, but the majority of streams in our township, in our county, and across the state don't have any kind of formal name. They're typically just noted as an unnamed tributary and then assigned a number. So, one of the reasons is the health of headwater streams. So those smaller streams in a watershed, the ones that are oftentimes unnamed, they're very critical to local water quality. In Chester County, I think it's 50+% of all stream miles in the county are these small headwater streams. So while you might not think, oh yes, that drains to that very tiny stream, it doesn't have an impact. All those tiny streams drain to larger streams and ultimately make up the water quality of those larger systems that often provide things like drinking water and recreational opportunities. By naming a stream, you improve both public and funder recognition. So you get people to understand, that, hey, that stream is important. It has a name. And then grant funders like to see that a stream has a name because it's much easier to remember, much greater sense of place when a stream has a name. So it helps to establish a sense of place. And then ultimately, I think a stream naming effort is a good way to raise awareness of local streams and to inform people about their local history, to connect people to that history, and just get people to care a little bit more about the streams in their community. If people don't care about something, they're not likely to go out of their way to take care of it or to advocate for it. So if you can form a connection and get people to understand that, hey, this is something important, it provides good services, has a purpose, it's something we want to keep clean. It just helps to raise awareness of that and get people interested and motivated. All right, so Chester County, this is a map of Chester County. We are located up here in the very northern part of Chester County. North Coventry is spread across the Pigeon Creek watershed, the French Creek watershed, and then it has several streams draining directly to the Schuylkill River. Ultimately, Chester County, most of the streams in Chester County drain over to the Delaware River or to the Schuylkill River. And then if you're in the southwestern part of the county, those streams will drain out to either the Susquehanna, like the Octorara Creek, or directly down into the Chesapeake Bay, like the Big Elk Creek and Northeast Creek. So just a little bit of context for where we are in Chester County for those of you who are not from North Coventry. Zooming in a little bit, this is a map of North Coventry Township. The gray lines here indicate our boundaries. We have we have about a dozen map streams in North Coventry Township, and we have 4 that are formally named through the USGS. The Schuylkill River forms our northern boundary. Pigeon Creek kind of flows through the south central part of the township. Rock Run forms the border with South Coventry, and I think it's Warwick Township in there on the southwestern part of the township. And then we have a portion of Mill Creek located mostly in French Creek State Park that drains down into the Schuylkill River. The areas on this map that are highlighted in green are those are high quality watersheds designated by PADEP. So they're watersheds that have either good water quality or they support some kind of special or unique species. Mill Creek and Rock Run, both highlighted in blue, those are exceptional value streams. So that's just like another tier higher of protection, a little bit more stringent standards for water quality and species living in those streams. So those are kind of the goal is to have an exceptional value stream. That's kind of the top of the list. These arrows point to all these unnamed streams. So there's 8 different streams here that are mapped and that are assessed by PADEP that do not have a name. So quite a few streams in the township are not formally named. They might have a local name that we use, and the streams that we named specifically in this effort or that we're going through the effort to name, they're streams that have local names, and you might be familiar with them, but they're not names that are recognized by the state. They're not recognized by the federal government. And so they're often just referred to, like I said before, as an unnamed tributary, like 0176. Very unremarkable, very forgettable. So it's fun to make sure a stream has a name. With this effort, we focused on 4 streams. If this goes well, we can certainly continue this, but we wanted to kind of kick this off by formally naming 4 streams, like I said, that already have a name that is recognized by the township, recognized by locals, but it's not formally recognized at the federal or state level. So Kenilworth Creek in the northeastern part of the township, Bickle Run that kind of flows from under Route 100, kind of in the central eastern part of the township, across Kime Street, across Miller Road. Eckers Run or Eckers Creek flows kind of along Sheep Hill Road. Sometimes it's called Laurel Run. And then Schenkel Hollow Run in the western part of the township drains areas kind of along Unionville Road, along Cold Spring Road, over by Fernbrook Lane, kind of near Coventry Woods. Part of that area goes to Pigeon Creek. Some of that area flows over into Schenkel Hollow Run. How do you even go about beginning to name a stream? What is the process like? So the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, they operate and maintain the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. So they're responsible for any kind of geologic or geographic feature. They're responsible for overseeing the names of that. And any kind of naming effort ultimately goes through this USGS Board on Geographic Names. They have a website with a lot of really good resources. Some of those resources are the Geographic Names Information System, GNIS. How do you know if a stream's already named? Well, you can go online to this USGS Geographic Names Information System webpage. Just Google it, easy enough, it'll pop right up. They have a mapping feature where you can zoom in on a feature and say, hey, does this have a name? You can click on it, it'll tell you the name. Or if you know the name or you think you know the name of a stream, you can type in something like Kenilworth Creek and see if that pops up. And if it doesn't, it's most likely not formally named. It's always good to second check by going on to the mapping feature and checking it out. But any geographic feature that is named is included in this GNIS system. Another way is the Pennsylvania Spatial Data Access website. They have online maps that you can check out. You can either download data for use in like ArcMap programs, or you can zoom in just on your browser and you can click on a stream specifically, and it'll tell you if that stream is named, or it'll tell you if that stream is an unnamed tributary and it has numbers assigned to those unnamed tributaries. So if you've got a stream running by your house and you say, I think that stream is named this, but I actually don't know, you can go to POSDA and just search their National Hydrography Dataset, click Preview, and this will come up, and then you can just zoom right into that stream and click on it, and it'll tell you if it's named. The majority of streams in, not only North Coventry and Chester County, but across the state are not formally named. So, it's you can name any stream technically. Technically, any legal definition of a stream, any body of water that flows in a channel and has bed and banks, even if it only flows for part of the year. So it could be, an intermittent stream that flows after like a storm event. Legally, you can name that. But generally, it's good to try to focus efforts on streams that appear on a USGS map, that are located in that National Hydrography Dataset, or that are included on like FEMA floodplain maps. So I have an example of a USGS map up here. They map a lot of streams in pretty good detail. So if a stream's not on a USGS map, it doesn't mean you cannot name it. It just means that you might have to go to a little bit more length to prove that that feature exists and that it's worthy of being named. So what process did we take for this? I'm just going to kind of go over how we approached it and then kind of go over the requirements and the information that's needed for submitting an application to USGS to formally name a stream. So we really first kicked this off, I guess, going to the Board of Supervisors, just to let them know that we were interested in this effort, to see if they were supportive of going through this. Ultimately, it is helpful to have a letter from the Board of Supervisors or from your county just stating that they concur with the names that are proposed and that they're in agreement with the process. You will probably not have success if you are a random resident submitting an application without any kind of letter of support from a local governing entity. They really want to see some kind of level of support from either a municipal government or a county government to formally go through the naming process. So we first met with the supervisors. And next, when we kind of dove into this, the first thing I did was met with the North Coventry Township Historical Commission. They were very helpful. A lot of very good institutional knowledge, a lot of good just historical knowledge of the area in general, pointed me in a lot of good directions, including finding some good historic maps, finding some good written resources that just had some good historical data. Next is we wrote a letter or a short article for the township newsletter, and we solicited information. And we had some people reach out, had some really good information that we received from residents. I got to do a farm tour of a resident that said, "Hey, I live on this creek, come out and you can see it." And I've got some documents of old deeds and old resident information, which he provided. So that was very helpful and made for a fun day. And then I took a look at past comprehensive plans, open space plans, so some local written histories, including Estelle Kramer's book, Coventry, the Schuylkill District, very good book with a lot of really good information about local history. And then poured over a lot of old historic maps, trying to find justification for the names that we were proposing to use for these streams. So we found, I think the oldest map that I used that was useful was the 1847 Bowen and Yeager map here, North Coventry Township. Didn't have a lot of great information on it, but it did have, information on Jones Run, which is now Kenilworth Creek. So it's kind of interesting to see that, that actually had a former name to it. Let's see, there we go. This map is the 1860 T.J. Kennedy map. Very detailed, had a lot of good landowner information on it. Did not have the name of streams, but a lot of the streams that we have assigned names to are named after landowners that had settled in that area in the 1700s, 1800s, and their names were included in this 1860 map from T.J. Kennedy. And then finally, probably the most detailed map in terms of names of property owners was the 1883 Braes Farm Atlas map of North Coventry Township that had the name of every property owner in the township and also showed the creeks on that map. A couple other older maps that we found, some from 1870 that were helpful too, but these were kind of the three main ones that we relied on for information. So when you're submitting an application to the USGS, they require you to fill out a form. It's called the Domestic Geographic Name Proposal Form. It is available on their website. You can Google that, Domestic Geographic Name Proposal Form. It'll pop up, and it's a PDF that you can download, and it's a fillable form. They're going to ask you for the location of the feature, which is kind of that center point of the feature. So for a stream, estimate basically the center of the watershed. They're going to ask you for the location of both the mouth of the stream, so where it enters the next, the confluence with the next water body, and for the upstream most headwaters of that stream. So, as best as you can identify the starting point. They're going to want that in lat and long coordinates. They want information with a description of the feature. So the stream length, the average width of the stream, the area of the watershed, maybe some special features of that watershed, any special information about maybe what that stream was used for is all very helpful. You have to propose a name and say, hey, this is the name that we're proposing. And you have to do provide a paragraph of information as to why you are proposing that name. They would like to know if it's already in local use and if there's any conflicting alternative names that are also in use locally. So if you have things like a township comprehensive plan or old historical maps with the name of the stream on it, That's all very helpful information for this process. As I mentioned earlier, they really require some level of support from either your municipality or your county or both. So they have to be in agreement with the name that is being proposed. And then if the name is honoring somebody, if it's a commemorative name, you need the honoree's name, their birth date, their death date, and a statement of local significance or relation to that feature, and kind of why it's being named after them. I think it's a 5-year waiting period. I mentioned this in the very beginning, but if you cannot name it after a living person, and you have to wait at least 5 years from their death date to name a geographic feature after them. So that's why they ask you to provide a birth date and a death date. All right. So I mentioned we tackled 4 streams in this effort. We have, there's at least 8 map streams that we could have named. We said we'd start with these 4 because they already have a good level of local familiarity. They already have local names that are used often by the township, often by township residents. So it's not like we had to kind of start from scratch and come up with the name from nothing. These names, like I said, they have local names, but they're not recognized at the federal level. So we've focused on Kenilworth Creek, kind of, like I said, in that northeast corner, Bickle Run in the eastern corner, Eckers Creek kind of north central, and Schenkel Hollow Run in the northwest part of the township. So Kenilworth Creek, right now, if you want to know the name of Kenilworth Creek, according to the state of Pennsylvania, Kenilworth Creek is called tributary 01653 to the Schuylkill River. So it's a very memorable name. But we're going to propose one more memorable, Kenilworth Creek, because it is related to the small village of Kenilworth. It flows right through that area. It flows through Kenilworth Park in North Coventry Township. The township has been using that name for decades, so it's a name familiar to folks that live in the area. It's a relatively small watershed, drains 1.31 square miles. Not very much is forested, just 13%. 58% is developed, so it's a relatively developed watershed, and 13% of it is impervious surface, based on the 2011 land use data set. When a stream gets over 10% impervious surface, oftentimes that's kind of the tipping point where you really begin to see water quality impairments and aquatic life impairments. When you have more impervious cover, you're getting a lot more runoff into a stream. Usually there's things like chlorides, like Phoebe mentioned, so like road salts. You're getting things like metals getting into streams, other just kind of trash and stuff that gets into the stream and degrades water quality, degrades habitat. And then also just running off of a surface itself, a paved surface, it results in a much higher peak flow in a stream. And so you have a much greater rush of water during a storm event, instead of a nice gradual rise in like a forested watershed. If you have a lot of impervious cover, it drains that stream very quickly, and the stream flows very fast, rises very quickly, and it leads to things like bed scour and erosion and sedimentation, which all just degrade water quality. Kenilworth Creek is technically a high quality stream, but it is now listed for as impaired for siltation and flow modification. So there are some minor water quality issues there. As I mentioned, the earliest reference we have to Kenilworth Creek on a map is 1847, and it was called Jones Run. I cannot find the earliest mention of Kenilworth Creek, before the late 1900s. It was always unnamed on any kind of map I saw, but kind of starting in the 1990s, some of the township documents started referring to it as Kenilworth Creek. It's named after the village of Kenilworth. Kenilworth itself is named after the village in Warwickshire, England, which is next to the town of Coventry. There was a man named John Kime back in the 1800s, I think in the mid 1850s or so. He started a store in what is now the town of Kenilworth, or the village of Kenilworth, At the time, it was called Madison and Polktown, so there were two separate villages. Um, John Kime felt that that was kind of clunky because the villages were kind of growing together. So he petitioned to have it renamed Kenilworth, and in 1882, the village was renamed Kenilworth, but the stream was never formally named. As I mentioned, it is a high quality stream, so it is one we wanted to prioritize in naming. Schenkel Hollow Run is the next one. As I mentioned, that's on the western side of the township. Um, Again, it currently has the exciting name of tributary 01712 to the Schuylkill River. It's about 2.4 miles long. It's a little bit bigger watershed, about 3 square miles. And it's actually majority forested, 14% developed and about 1.1% impervious cover. Um, it's not listed as impaired by DP, so that's good. But it's also not considered high quality. But the township has been working with Green Valleys Watershed Association. They had Green Valleys go out and do some water quality samples, and the water quality is actually really good in Schenkel Hollow Run. Good enough that at some point, if it continues to be high quality, if the water continues to be high quality, it could probably be petitioned for an upgrade in designation to a high quality stream. Schenkel Hollow Run is named for Henry or Heinrich Schenkel. Um, Heinrich Schenkel, he traveled over to Pennsylvania in 1752, landed in Philadelphia, and shortly after that moved up to North Coventry Township, where he obtained a tract from Thomas and Richard Penn, so the children of William Penn. Um, Heinrich donated 10 acres of land, or his family did, for use as a community cemetery, and also had a schoolhouse associated with them at the headwaters of Schenkel Hollow Run. That was included on the 1847 Chester County map. You may be familiar with Schenkel, what is it, United Church of Christ, I think it is now. That church is on land that was formerly owned by Heinrich Schenkel. So Schenkel Hollow Run ultimately derives its name from that family. Eckers Creek is the next one in the center of the township. Drains about 2 square miles. It's about half forested, 17% developed, but there's a good bit of ag, pretty intense ag in the watershed. So it is a high quality stream, but it is now listed as impaired for siltation and agricultural runoff. So it's pretty heavily farmed for row crops, and usually when there's intense farming, over the decades, that can lead to a variety of impairments. And so Eckers Creek is impaired, but it is still designated as a high quality stream by DEP. So it does have a special set of conditions to protect it. It's named after Christian Ecker. He settled along the creek in 1835. His family lived there till 1917. So there was a couple different generations that farmed along Eckers Creek in the 1800s and early 1900s. Traditionally, this has been called Laurel Run in the past couple decades by the township in different planning documents. But the reality is that the historical name for what we could find going back before Laurel Run, locals had referred to this as Eckers Creek. PennDOT actually had also referred to this as Eckers Creek, even though it's not formally named and formally recognized. PennDOT has that down as its informal name. So that's what we are going to go with and submit a request for. Bickle Run is the last stream that we tackled. It's a tributary to Pigeon Creek. It's about 2.8 miles long. Drains, like I said, that east central portion of the township. So kind of coming over here, this is Route 100. So watershed extends up above Route 100. Bickle Run flows underneath Kime Street, underneath Miller Road, into East Coventry Township, under Speece Road through the Culp Farm, and eventually makes its way down to Pigeon Creek over by Sawmill Road and Ellis Woods Road. It's about 39% forested, 27% developed, but it is not an impaired stream. The water quality is pretty good, and it's a high quality stream as designated by DEP. Pigeon Creek watershed has some of the best water quality in Chester County. So as I said, this flows into Pigeon Creek. So overall, it's a pretty good quality stream. It's named after the Bickle family. They owned land along the creek in the 1880s. I think it was the earliest record I could find. George Bickle in the 1883 Bray's Farm Atlas owned a farm. Um, I don't know if it directly touched the creek, but it was in the vicinity of the creek, and he had family after that that moved to a farm along the creek itself. Harry Bickle, I think, lived in that farm along the creek. He was a member of the Northern Chester County School Board, lived along the creek for much of his life. Um, so ultimately, Bickle Run is kind of just not named after a specific person, but just the Bickle family that had settled along there in the 1800s. The township has been using Bickle Run since at least 2002. Planning documents dating back the last 20 plus years have all consistently referred to this stream as Bickle Run, but again, it's not recognized by the state or the USGS. Those are the four streams that we really wanted to focus on for this effort. Like I said, they're all streams that, they have names that the township has been using colloquially for at least the last couple of decades, maybe for some of them the last half a century. But there's never been an effort to formally name them. So we wanted to get them officially recognized before tackling maybe some of these other streams in the township that don't have a local common name. Just a conclusion to wrap all this up. So streams, they are an important resource that provide many ecosystem functions and services. They're things that should be protected. They have, they support unique species. They support good water quality if they're taken care of, which provides drinking water and lots of other good things that benefit us and make our lives better. Efforts to raise awareness of streams can help residents connect with and care with these resources. So, as I said, if a stream is named, it kind of sticks in people's head a little bit better. And going through the effort to name a stream, talking about its water quality, its local history, are all ways to get people thinking about, oh yeah, that stream runs through my backyard. What are ways that I can protect it, or what are things that I can do to make sure that stream maintains good water quality, or if it doesn't have good water quality, that the water quality can be improved. I kind of always think back when I was in college. I worked with the Fish and Boat Commission doing watershed assessments, and we would go to streams and we would collect chemistry data, and we collect fisheries data and benthic bug data to kind of try to get a good idea of the condition of a stream. And there were streams that I remember being at, remember having amazing water quality and amazing amounts of brook trout, beautiful fish, but they didn't have a name. And if I ever wanted to go find them on a map, I couldn't because they were unnamed tributaries. And we would sample dozens of unnamed tributaries every year. But then there's other streams that were less remarkable in terms of their quality or in terms of their community, aquatic community. But I can recall their names because they had a formal name that was included on all the maps that we would pour over. So it just kind of goes to show, like, if a stream is named, it is more recognizable. It sticks in people's head a little bit, and it kind of just helps people to make that connection a little bit better. And then kind of my last concluding point here, anybody can name a stream. You do have to have support from your township or your county, but anybody can do it. Anybody can start the process. There's a lot of good resources available, and I touched on some of them here. The POSDA website, the Pennsylvania Spatial Database, has great information with that hydrology data set. You can see names of existing streams. Stream Stats is a program by the USGS where you can pick a point on a stream and it'll tell you the numbers of stream miles in that watershed. It'll tell you land use. You can go through and you can collect and pick out probably several dozen different variables that it'll calculate for you or it'll tell you. It saves a lot of time instead of going through and doing individual analyses on ArcGIS or something. And then Google Earth is good. You can, oftentimes see with the leaf off, where a stream begins or about where a stream begins. You can see where a stream ends. You can click on those points and get the lat and the long, the coordinates for those locations to help you get that information that's required for that domestic name form that is required to be submitted to USGS. So lots of good resources. If anybody ever has any questions, I'm always available via email to help people out. But I think it's a fun thing to do. It's a fun process to get to learn more about your local streams, to get to learn more about the history of the stream, of the watershed, the people that interacted with the stream back in the day. It just helps to provide a little bit more meaning and a little bit more context to our local waterways. So that is all I have here. Thank you again for joining. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd take them now.
Corey, this is Phoebe. Can you tell people what our next step is now that we've gone through this and we've got the paperwork done? Now what do we do?
Yes. So once you fill out your official domestic name form, you must submit it to the township, bring it to the Board of Supervisors and say, hey, we are naming these, we would like to name these streams. We went to the board beforehand just to say, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Now that we have all the information, we'll follow up and we'll say, hey, this is the information we found, quick summary data on each stream and the historical background information that justifies the name. Show that to the board. We'll probably draft a letter of support and ask them to sign that. And then we would formally submit that to the USGS Board on Geographic Names for their consideration. They can reject a name if they want. If they feel that there's not sufficient justification for a name, they can reject it. Or if there's another feature nearby with the same name, they can reject it. And it's about a 6-month review process for the Board on Geographic Names to come up with a decision. But if you are interested in naming a local stream, either in North Coventry or outside of North Coventry, I'd be happy to help as I can to pass along any resources that might be helpful with that process, or just to bounce some ideas off of me. I'd be happy to do that. We're thankful. Schuylkill Township provided a lot of really good resources for us, so we're more than welcome or more than willing to pass that baton and to try to do the exact same thing for others trying to do this process. If nothing else, I will sign off. Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.